There you
Mhm. Hey everyone, we have made it. It was a little challenging getting some of our technology together,
go.
but we are here, and I hope it continues to work and it continues to move forward. But it's so great to be here again with you, Dr. Evelyn. Welcome.
Thank you. It feels like it's been so long.
Right, it has been a long time, but I am so glad to get started again. So I know you brought up the word forgiveness. And to me, it is so interesting to hear that, and to think and remember that forgiveness is the number one key for the kingdom of God. My first statement I want to make with that is,
Yeah,
and let me know if I get frozen and not
yeah.
heard.
It's happening, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I might can even move, so we'll see. We'll just keep working with it. But my number one thing that I remember the Lord saying is with forgiveness is that we have to be, it has to be the core of who we are, because when you are a Christian, right, we can never be perfect and good enough to be able to receive the fullness of Christ and his blessings. It's only by the blood of Jesus through forgiveness that we can do that, right? So that is something I know that I'd love to chat on further in this chat here. But let me know your thoughts. Like, why did it come up? Why did you want to talk about this topic? What does that look like for you?
So on when I wrote my first book, Natasha, the Lord led me to talk about forgiveness. And I remember looking at him, well, not looking at him, but saying, "Come again, God? Really?" Like everyone knows that I'm a very unforgiving person. Everyone knows that, that's not who I am. I hold grudges for a long time. How funny, right? And then, but it was very strong what he put in my heart. So that was the first book. I wrote a chapter on forgiveness, and my second book is all about forgiveness. So coming from someone who had the hardest time forgiving, um, and wasn't known for being a forgiving person, the Lord led me to write a chapter. And through the journey, I learned so much about not only forgiving, but also asking forgiveness. So that they're very set, even though it's the same word, they're very separate. Forgiving is one thing, and asking forgiveness is another. And one of the things I feel that I learned so much through my journey of forgiving and restoration was that a heart, once we are further along in healing, it's so much easier to forgive and to also ask people for forgiveness. And I have seen it, Natasha, how asking forgiveness restores and heals other people's hearts. So there's such a power in asking forgiveness as well. So that's one of the things that um, I'd like to talk about today as well.
Yes, I love that. I think the fact the one point you mentioned was, we can only forgive if we've been forgiven, really. Like, that's true forgiveness. Like, it's really hard when we're not healed and when we're still wounded to forgive people. I don't know about you, but I thought I forgave everyone. I thought I loved everyone until I got married. And I was like, oh, they just weren't in my space. Like, it was so easy to forgive and love people when they're not directly in your space. But when they get into your space or get into your behaviors and affecting you, then it's like, wow, you just realize how much more you need forgiveness and help, ask Jesus to help you, right? So I really think that's a core foundation that we have to believe, guys. And remember, if we're having a challenge with forgiveness, then we have to remember and think about, why am I having this challenge? Is it because for me, at one point in my life, all men were evil, and I didn't know that I thought that, but I just felt that as a little kid until I got older and started seeing godly men. But up to that point, I couldn't forgive because I'm like, no, they're just mean. Like, why would I forgive them? They're not good people. They're not safe. He's not safe. Just because he was a man. And so I didn't get healing. And then it was much harder to forgive in that way.
Definitely. And I think also we see forgiveness as something different. So for me, one of the things God had to teach me during my journey was that number one, forgiveness is not a feeling. And I think we equate forgiveness with feeling. I don't feel like forgiving. Well, you're never going to feel like forgiving or asking forgiveness because it's not a feeling, it's a decision. So I think that when I separated those two, my feelings from the decision to be obedient to God, the decision to let go and forgive because this will give me peace. And also seeing forgiveness as I'm not doing it for the aggressor, I'm doing it to free myself. Number one, to free myself from the aggression and the aggressor, but also to be able to move forward into healing. I can't heal if I don't forgive. I have to forgive first, and then the healing begins. And what the Lord gave me was, look, you make the decision to forgive, and then the healing journey starts. And during the healing journey, Natasha, many times I felt, oh, maybe I haven't forgiven because I'm having the same triggers and the same feelings. And the Lord was like, you're healing. Let yourself heal. Surrender. When those feelings come, then you surrender. And I remember I would tell when the guilt and the feelings and the anger would come back, I would be like, I already forgave. And I would write dates on when I forgave certain people. Oh no, I forgave, 2 years ago. Therefore, this is healing, and I need to just surrender the feeling.
Right. That is so good. So I even see like both sides, like you're saying, you're like, there's a time when, yeah, well, it always does start with forgiveness. Like it is that choice. Like you said, you have to make a choice. Do you
Mhm.
want to work on the forgiveness or not? So it's that surrender, that choice. But then there is that healing before you can truly forgive. And I think even that truly forgiving is also releasing the trauma in the body. It's changing
Mhm.
the mindsets. It's not having those erg feelings around that person or when you hear that person's name. I think there's a lot of things that confirm that we've truly forgiven. Um, but I love too that you're saying that it truly is a choice and it's not waiting for everything to come into alignment. You're just saying, God, I'm choosing to forgive this person. And that begins his ability to heal. Yeah, that's great.
Because healing is different, and I feel that it's during the healing part that's our time with God. The healing part, that's not where we need the other person to come and ask forgiveness. It's nice, and I remember that I had a situation where I was like, oh, if only the person would come and tell me that they were sorry. And the Lord was like, even if they come and tell you they're sorry for what they did and they ask you forgiveness, it's not going to change the pain the aggression caused. Therefore, you know how sometimes we hold on to, well, if they would ask me forgiveness, then I would heal or I would get over it. That's not necessarily what I've experienced and what I've seen others do. When my biggest wound, a childhood wound, was my father, and he died before any amends could have been done, and he never asked forgiveness. He never came and said, I'm sorry. Um, but he did to my mom, which I feel that in the spiritual realm, when he asked my mom for forgiveness and she forgave him, I felt that that opened the doors for us, the daughters, to be healed even without
Mm,
him asking forgiveness. So I feel that the healing, I always tell people, the healing part is you and God. It's you, it's sitting with the pain, sitting with God, crying it out, or whichever way you are able to release. That's the healing part. That takes longer. The forgiving is a decision that you make and say, I don't want to carry this. I don't want to be tied to the aggressor anymore. I just want to be free from this. And I decide to forgive, and then I start healing.
wow, that's so good. And then I even keep going back to the fact that, but I couldn't even think about forgiveness till I understood God forgiving me. And I don't know if that's always needed. I mean, you can give your input, but for me, it was like I had to truly come to a point, not to the fullness of loving myself 100%, because it's always a journey, but it was like, wait, God's forgiven me for so much. And I don't know, his supernatural compassion enveloped me for certain situations that I should never forgive that person, in my opinion. I'm like, no way. There is no reason to forgive him or her. Like, this is not good. But God gave me compassion. And it was like, whoa, like, why do I care to even forgive that? Like, why? But it's because he's in me. I believe when he's in us, those convictions, those moments of compassion, those moments of aha, like, wow, that person was abused when they grew up, so they abused me. Now, it doesn't give them a free right, but it helps me to have compassion to forgive and say, but we can talk about this, but if you're not going to change your ways, no, you're not around me. But I still forgive you, and I still have compassion that your life is challenging. So I think for me, it had to be that foundation of God's compassion and love that's helped me to truly let go of people and not wanting to get my own revenge or grudge or any of that.
I
Yeah.
love to hear that. I love to hear that, because for me, it was definitely a different journey. Just I feel that I was, the prodigal son. I was the older son, or I felt like the older son of the prodigal son story. And I grew up in church. I was a good girl, and so for me, it had to be a change of thinking, the of changing my way of thinking about God. So for me, it was like, I'm very proud and arrogant. I deserve better. And why is this happening? So it had to be a breakdown of my pride, where it was like, oh, wait, I'm a sinner too, because I always felt extremely self-righteous, because I did everything right, because I was such a good daughter, because
Mhm.
I was a model student. So for me, God had to literally come and break that religious, arrogant pride of, oh, I deserve all the great in life because I've been such a good person.
Wow.
So for me, it was more of just a religious shattering of my
Mhm.
religious views, because
Wow.
I always felt, oh, I'm owed, a great life, and for no one to dislike me and for no one to hurt
Mhm.
me. It had to be breaking that religious pride in me.
Wow, that's such good insight. I've never thought of it that way because, but it's hard. I mean, you can speak into this. I would imagine when you're in religion or when you're in that mindset, it's hard to see it different because you think that you're right because you're right. You're like, well, I wouldn't think this way if I wasn't right, so it must be right. And so, I think, like, what are some tips or ideas that you could say, hey, if you really have this challenge to where you can't be confronted, to where you don't have compassion for people, you don't really easily forgive, or maybe you're judging people so quickly every day where you're just spouting out, they did this, they shouldn't. Like, what are some tips for us to say, am I walking in a religious spirit or religiosity that would hinder me and hinder forgiveness?
My number one suggestion and tip for everyone is always allow other people to speak into you. Always, no matter who, no matter what. Always allow people to speak into you, because I feel that that's where I got my breakthrough. I and some people were so brave back in the days that they would speak into me, and I'd be like, I'm not listening to you because I know better. But it went in. It made me think,
Okay.
and many times I had that arrogant, angry, and again, Natasha, I was walking in such anger, and I was holding on to the wound and the unforgiveness, because in my mind it gave me strength not to fall apart. In
Right.
my head, that was what was pushing me to not break and to not be vulnerable and to not I guess, and I thought I'm just going to fall apart and not have that strength to continue being who I wanted to be and achieving and doing all that.
Yeah.
So when I allowed people, and thank God for the brave souls that would speak into me. I had a friend that I feel for her, because my goodness, she would. no matter how much I would come at her and I would be like, no, you're wrong, and then start just, pointing out
Yeah.
her flaws and her mistakes, she would always speak into me. And it it really worked. It
Yeah.
really worked. Her words would resonate and resonate. And I think because there were times that I would put down my guard, and that's when her words would come in. And I know there were Holy Spirit just coming in to
Wow.
convict. So yes, and I think that, and also holding on to sadness, anger, whatever emotion you hold on to, sometimes it's just comfort, and it's shielding us from really facing the pain. We
Mm,
have to face the pain no matter what.
right. That is so good. I think that's what I think I was going to put in chat next was surrender. Like it seems no matter the path that we choose to go on, it starts with surrender. And, really surrendering is a choice. Like there's no other way to put it. Like when you're surrendering something, it is truly your choice. Whether you're surrendering to confrontation, you're surrendering to feedback, you're surrendering to hope instead of fear, right? You're surrendering to God's ways. You're surrendering to, hey, God, you said this in your word. I need to know how to get there because I'm not able to do this. Even if it's a forgiving an abuser that's legit, obviously wrong for physically abusing you, it's like, God, I can't do this. So I need to surrender to you and you're going to have to help me. And guess what? He will do it. I've never seen him not do that. When you surrender your heart and you surrender to him by even speaking your voice, speaking with your words. God, I surrender these feelings. I surrender these thoughts. Help me change. And he is faithful to do it.
Surrendering was one of the things I had to do over and over. Surrender the feelings, the thoughts connected to the trauma, the memories connected to the pain. I mean, I had to
Mhm.
surrender everything that was connected to whatever I was angry at. And Natasha, I remember, I don't know if you remember, you might be too young, Seventh Heaven. There was a Seventh Heaven
Yeah.
series back in the days. And I remember once the mom said, I don't know how to not be angry. And
Mm,
you know how many times I've sat with the Lord and said, I don't know how to forgive this. I don't know how to let go. I don't know how to surrender this, because it's, for me at that moment, I can't. And I think that that's where God just comes in, as like, okay, you don't know how to do it. Let me help you.
yes. Oh, isn't he a good father? I mean, the Bible tells us he's a good father. I'm like, it truly is the reality. And when we don't feel or think or sense that he is a good father, it's because we're missing something. I feel, like I was speaking to someone recently and they just, are in stuck moment and they're like, well, I don't know what's blocking. I ask, I pray, I do all these things. And it's like, well, let's break it down, right? You break it down. Well, I know God's not blocking me. He's there always when I call upon him, and then you can start looking, of course, at your thoughts every day, right? Even your eating. What are you eating every day? What are you feeding your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings every day, right? So I think that we can start breaking it down even in that way. Like sometimes when you can't feel that God is coming when you're surrendered, you have to look at, am I truly just relying on my feelings and thoughts and what's happening on the inside, or am I truly just saying, God, I just don't even know, so I'm letting it go? Because I think that's part of it too, especially if you're listening to this, you might be someone who likes to go through inner healing and get help and change, but then there's those places where we're clueless, right? For 10 years, I don't know if you had that moment, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been around this for 10 years and I did not see this, how
Yeah.
is this still here? And so I love when God does that too. He knows what you can handle and when it's time. That's another great piece, is that he knows the timing of your life. When is it safe to let go? And so maybe you can speak that into that too as a professional. Like, I know there's times when it's not safe, right, for people to I don't know, be around obviously a situation, even if it's not fully physical abuse. But what are some things you can talk about into that of someone that may be encountering abuse or challenging relationships?
So I always talk about this in my seminars, and I tell people, forgiving does not mean that you're giving the other person a free pass to access your life. There's certain relationships that you should restore, and it's going to be a good thing to restore for you and for the other person. But there's going to be certain relationships that you can restore, but you need to set boundaries around it. Sexual abuse, domestic violence, a person who refuses to acknowledge that they did wrong to you, uh, and that continue. I call them repeated offenders that continue because they don't see what they're doing wrong. You can restore a relationship like that, where the person is completely, no, it's all your fault. There's nothing I can do to change. You can't restore that, and I'm not saying you can never restore that. I'm just saying at that particular point you can't restore it until, because restoration, forgiveness, healing, restoration happens when both parties are willing to work on it and say, okay, I'm going to work on what I did wrong, and you're going to work on what you did wrong, and we're going to restore. But in a sexual abuse situation or any domestic violence or anything where the other person just refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoing, and it's blaming all the everything on you, and they don't feel that there's anything they need to do, that's really hard to restore. And again, forgiveness, healing does not mean that you're going to be best friends with the abuser or the aggressor. That's not what it means. It means you're letting go, you're surrendering. Your heart is free from the emotion. So a lot of people say, so how do I know when I'm forgiven and I'm healed? Well, you no longer feel that anger, sadness, fear around the person. You no longer feel that tension. You no longer need to be right or show them what they did wrong. You no longer feel that once you have forgiven. So it's not about, oh, I'm going to be best friends with that person. In some situations, yes, restore and be best friends when the aggression is not something that's severe.
Right. No, that's such a good point. I think that, again, if you're going to be in a situation, if you're in a situation, even now, physically or sexually, things have happened, obviously the safety is physical. So you need to get safe. And then you work through that restoration process. So also knowing and realizing that, forgiveness and restoration and healing doesn't mean that you stick around and you become a doormat and you just, lay your life down, every day for every wicked person, right? And sometimes, we were wicked, right? It's like, so I'm not saying that it's just anyone that's mistreating you, it doesn't mean that you just lay down your life in the way that you continue getting that abuse. Yes, we're called to lay down our lives, but that means in obedience to God. And God also says you don't hang out with the sinners, right? You don't hang out with the wicked people. And so if you find yourself in that situation, then it's really asking the Lord with counsel. Okay, in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. So you get out and get safety, and then you ask the Lord, and you're asking counselors, right? And like you said, there's things that if the person is acting narcissistic, which I know that word's so popular right now, but really narcissism is in my opinion, it's the reality that the person can't see that they're wrong and they're projecting and blaming everything to the other person. The simplest form, there's a lot of things that can go in it, but if they're not able to see their responsibility, their wrongness, then like you said, it's not going to change until they're ready to see that. And so just being aware of those things, I think, is helpful, because when you're not, it can be like a roller coaster and a wheel that continues and continues, and the abuse will continue, and it's not fun.
And I think part of forgiveness too, Natasha, is it changes who you are. There are certain people that I forgave, and they forgave me, and we asked each other for forgiveness, but the relationship didn't go back to where it was because I changed and because they changed. They're no longer the same person. And I was listening to something where the speaker was saying wound mates. That some people choose wound mates, and it's people with this that they're attracted to because it feeds the wound that they have. And I feel that when I sat down with the Lord and I started my journey of healing, there were just people in my past that I no longer was compatible with,
Right.
because that wound and that neediness that I had in the past was no longer there. So I feel that forgiveness, it actually changes you a lot
Mm.
more than it changes the other person.
That's so good. Okay, so I'm trying to think of an example. Like, so what we're talking about with wound, you said wound mates, right? So um, the reality is, well, we can't share my marriage because, we got married and, he was, I think we were both victims, but the victim that we both had, the other person had the, what, perpetrator or whatever, the person that would be hurting. It's like, how could God put something so good together that he would press my buttons and I press his. Okay. So that's an easier way to put it. But, we attracted to each other, I think. And one was with Jesus, but also those wounds. And, marriage to me, it makes you more like Christ. Okay. If you're really surrendering, it's like, okay, if I surrender every day in marriage, I'm going to get closer to Jesus because I'm laying down my life in the good way. But, we realized once we been more mature and we've gotten more healing. It's been 16 years, but we're finally realizing, like, wow, we actually totally fed each other in the wounding department. It's like, oh, you have this rejection. Well, I am someone that will help you feel rejected. Oh, okay. And it's like those things attracted so well when we first got married. And we went to counseling and they even said, don't get married. So we didn't listen. We were rebellious, young love in love people that were Christian and had to wait. So we're like, we're getting married. We don't want to wait. We don't want to wait for, wisdom.
Yeah.
Obviously when you're 19, no, I was 25. You don't think that way, most people. So I wish I would have, but anyway, so we've gotten through it, but it really was the woundings that attracted each other as well. It was wild.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I love that aspect that you're sharing with that too. Now let's talk about too, if you had to sever a relationship, or like what are some of the boundaries, like can you just stop the relationship? Is it healthy to say, hey, here's my boundaries? Like what are some tips or ideas that you could share with people about stewarding pain in a relationship when they encounter it?
So with boundaries, I feel your heart has to be ready before you set the boundary, because that's where boundaries fail. Where you're like, you're in anger, you're like, I'm gonna set this boundary and I don't want you near me, but yet your heart is longing for them. So
Wow.
your heart has to be ready before you set a boundary. And also, there's a culture now of the trauma parents cause, and all these adult kids separating from their parents. And for some of them, yes, parents may have been abusive and there was a lot of trauma and they needed to make that separation. For others, we have to be very careful with our memories sometimes,
Mhm.
and vilifying other people. I always see my role in what I caused. When I look back at my life, I'm like, wait, no, but I was pretty arrogant, and I,
Mhm.
say and do things that I shouldn't have said. So we have to work on ourselves with boundaries first. We have, or with our heart first. Our heart has to be ready. With certain people, it's lovingly saying, okay, don't, I won't
Mhm.
tolerate you talking to me that way, and really setting that boundary whenever they're going to push because they're used to, that's a habit, they're going to talk to you that way. Immediately set that boundary, walk away, and say it before. uh, if you talk to
Mhm.
me and yell at me, or call me names, I'm going to walk away. I'm letting you know beforehand, so you have that conversation beforehand. And you say,
Right.
when you, and be very specific, talk about the behavior when you yell at me, or when you call me dumb, or when you raise your voice when we're with other people, or when you air out my flaws in front of other people. That hurts me, therefore I
Mhm.
will either stop you or walk away. So talk about the behavior that they're doing. And you can even, if the person is open to it, explore why do you feel the need to yell at me, or call me names, or
Right.
air out my flaws in front of people, and see what they have to say about that.
Mhm.
So you said that boundary. You say, this is what I'm going to tolerate. And step one, and then they will violate that boundary. Step two is kind of pushing yourself further apart. And step three is just not having contact with them. But it's
Mhm.
progressive. And again, with some people, every situation is different.
Right.
uh, with domestic violence, I would say set that boundary and stay away. Because it's domestic violence, and then if the person tends
Mhm.
to have the violent outbursts, there's no step one, two, and three. For other people, and for people who are willing to work on it, and I see it all
Mhm.
the time in marriages where the wife is like, oh, you're not doing what you need to do, and but there's no clear behavioral, or not only behavioral
Mhm.
contribution to it, like where the wife is like, you you react to the kids, and it's sometimes kind of giving an option of how to not react, giving them
Right.
how they should behave instead of telling them don't do this. So I feel that should be
Nice.
the first one, to set if it's a person that you can work with.
Right. Wow, that's a great point. So I love that you're saying, your heart has to be ready, right? So if we're going to set boundaries out of anger and rage, and you know, it's hard to know what's the healthy boundary, right? So when you're in pain, I mean, who makes the best choices then? No one. So again, with counsel, get your heart right, make that boundary. Of course, though, like you said, if it's physical, get out and get safe. And then the next point that you made was, be specific. You made the point about the wife and husband. Okay, I'm hearing you. Just kidding. So it's like, are we really going to be sharing those direct details? Like, okay, well, what you did wrong, well, I don't know, you're just wrong, or you're just always this, you're always that, and you need to stop. Well, what do I need to stop exactly? I don't understand. Like, what did I do? Help me know. And so it's really hard when you're in marriage because you're probably have it built up on top of each other. Like, well, you've been doing this for 10 years, so I'm done. And the person's like, what are you talking about? So specific boundaries. Hey, you know what? You always leave your socks out, or you just, you smirk at me when I say something. And I just want you to know it's painful. I don't really want to be around it. So I probably am going to walk away, or, not talk right now. And if you want to talk about it, we can another time, but I'm not happy, or you did that. It was painful. I don't like it, the way you chatted to the kids. So I love that you're saying just really be specific. And it doesn't mean pointing the blame. We're taking a marriage, emotionally whole marriage class, which is awesome with Seth Dow right now. And some of that is what they're teaching too, is like, hey, you got to be clear. You can't just say these whole gestures about what's wrong with the person when they don't have anything to work on. They don't know what the boundary is to keep it for next time.
And Esther Perel talks about, usually in relationships, not only marriage, but any relationship, it's not about the actual behavior. It's not about them leaving the socks. What does it mean to you? To you might mean how disrespectful. You're not thinking, you're not caring about. So it goes deeper, and it's about talking
Mm,
about what is the offense. Because for you, it might trigger something else. Whereas for him, it's like, I was just tired. I didn't want to put my socks in the,
right.
why do I have to do it? I'm collecting them. And then, and it brings me to this week. My brother-in-law made a flan, and he was so excited. And he's like, oh, here, I want you to try it. And I was like, okay. And as soon as I tried it, I'm like, oh, this is so good. I'm having a party this Saturday. Can you make a flan? And later, my brother-in-law calls me and says, hey, by the way, I just need to let you know that I was really angry when you said that. And I'm like, what? Why? So
Mm,
for me, it was like showing him off, showing his flan
mhm.
up, off, and saying, look, he made a great flan. I want others to try it. But for him, it just triggered a childhood wound from his parents, where
Wow.
it wasn't about him. It was always about them, and them, just kind of taking credit for everything. And I was like, oh my goodness, I never meant it that way. So it just reminded me, and I've seen this in marriage so many times, Natasha. It's not about the actual behavior. It's about what it means and what it represents, and how we're seeing it through our own woundedness.
Wow. I mean, that takes so much self-control in a way, and surrender consistently, right? Because, you know, if you don't, well, first, if you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you're not getting around other people and doing things with counselors, or maybe even a safe marriage group if you're in marriage, or a singles group if you're in singles, doing some deeper understanding and training with that, if you don't get that awareness, right, then you're not going to understand those things. So I would say, number one, guys, get awareness and ask the Lord, okay, is there a book to read? Is there a course to take? Just to start educating yourself, to get that awareness. Because, yes, that is 100% the best thing for friendships, for coworkers, for marriage, for ministry, is to say, how am I seeing this situation? Like, it's okay. I can look at it and say that they're so evil, wrong, whatever. And, or I could say in a mature way, yeah, that wasn't correct, but why is it triggered? Like, why am I so angry about it? Why do I want to wipe them off my map, out of my ministry or out of my family? Like, what is this? Like, because the Lord says there's, sin. He forgives. He's like, if he can forgive 70 times 7, it's what he told us. And if we can't do that, then it's like, what's going on inside of us? So I love that you're saying, why is it happening? Giving those feelings, those thoughts, those emotions, why are they coming up when someone does a particular action? So I love that. All right. So go ahead. Do you have something else?
No, just, the other point I wanted to talk about is a lot of times we have to be fully aware of, are we the ones causing pain, and reversing it and seeing it as others causing us pain. And
Wow.
that's the hardest one to see. We are so unaware, and I have seen enough people in my life,
Mhm.
and treated enough people in my life to see we don't see our wrongdoing. We don't see what we are doing wrong. We always see it as the other person causing this.
Right.
So for every action there's a reaction, my friend used to say. And you have to, if there's a lot of conflict in your life, I always say you need to sit and figure out what you're doing, what you are doing to
Mhm.
cause that conflict. Because a lot of times it is about changing us. And I think my healing journey, my forgiveness journey, was changing Evelyn, because Evelyn was
Mhm.
angry, because Evelyn was seeing everything as rejection, because I was the one that needed to change. And my friend recently says she's been married for like 100 years, and she's like, I was so ready to divorce. She said, I was done. I
Mhm.
was ready. But she goes, when I worked on myself, and I hear these stories over and over, when I worked on myself and I changed, then my marriage changed. So, Natasha,
Wow.
a lot of times, when God is bringing, I'm reading a book with, it's amazing. It's title, it wasn't supposed to be this way, and it
Mhm.
talks about disappointment. And she
Mhm.
brought up, I'm enjoying this book. I started reading it yesterday. I couldn't put it down. And she talks about disappointment, and she
Mhm.
says, um, we have to, number one, know that we're life is not supposed to be perfect. Not every prayer is going to be answered, because
Mhm.
if it's
Mhm.
not aligned with God's will, right? Number
Right.
one. Number two, she goes, we're going to have pain, and we avoid it at all costs. And she talks about being, having this pain because something was wrong in her body. And she was praying for God to take the pain away. And she said, God didn't take the pain away. I had
Mhm.
to go through the pain, because it was when I went through the pain that I realized that there was, something really wrong with my internal organs. So they were able, the
Mhm.
pain is the one that showed me that I could have died if it wouldn't have, if the pain
Wow.
had been there. So we try to avoid pain at all costs. And when we walk through life hurting, and I say, or wounded, and we don't see it, because we won't see our own woundedness, we blame everybody else, and we have so much conflict with people around us. And it's about our pain. It's about saying, okay, instead of asking God to take away this pain, what is this? What is causing this pain? What is causing all the conflict around me? Why am I so conflictual? And only then will you be able to see, oh, okay, oh, this is what I need to change. I
So
have
good.
to change me. And I tell you, I mean, this is firsthand. I had to change who I was in order not for me not to keep walking in woundedness and pain and in so much conflict.
Wow, that is such a good point. And that's exactly what the Lord did in my marriage, you know. So obviously we're both imperfect, but I felt like God made me change everything for him. And could that be true or not? Still, that's up to debate. But the point being is, like, I felt that, oh wait, like, why do I have to keep changing? Why is this? And it's because I had a lot of the challenge, and you don't see it because you think, well, I would not be mean, but it's not that we're choosing to be mean. It's that we have mindsets, behaviors, and from pain that wasn't addressed, right? And so when that pain's not addressed, these behaviors, these mindsets become our realities.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't recognize that those realities could be incorrect, then everyone else is wrong. So just like you're saying, it's like, wow, take that moment, guys, when you're getting offended, when you have to walk through forgiveness, when God's putting his finger on something, like you said, when God's putting his finger on something, take that time to say, okay, God, well, where do I need adjusting? Like, what needs to be adjusted in me? So really start with the process first, again, with surrender, with asking God where in me needs to change, and look at the situation different, so then you can truly forgive the person. Yeah, I love that. Okay. Is there anything else you want to share before we end the call today?
Just stay in community. We cannot be without community. And I think woundedness isolates us and keeps us out of community. Woundedness, busyness, conflict keeps us out of community. Stay in community. Allow others to speak into you. Have those friends that will speak into you even when you won't listen. You gotta ask people to speak into your life. Be alert. Be open. Know that you have to grow every day, and it's a journey. We have to keep growing.
That's so good. I love that. Well, thank you so much again for joining today, Dr. Evelyn. And, guys, I put comments out there so you can go through and just remember some of the quotes that were shared today. And just remember, surrender to the Lord, trust him with your journey, the process. He knows you inside and out, and he knows what you need. And so if you're in those situations where you need that to be real to you, just make sure you're, like Dr. Evelyn said, you're getting in community, you're getting in counsel, you're being confrontable by loving friends, and taking all things in consideration. So, well, thank you so much again for joining, Dr. Evelyn.
Thank you. It was fun.
All right, guys, you guys have a good day. Bye.